Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland, and behind me is the house where Vincent van Gogh lived in 1876. We're in London, an area called Isleworth. Back then this was considered the county of Middlesex, so outside London. Anyway, Van Gogh was born in the Netherlands in 1853, and his father was a clergyman of the Dutch Reformed Church, i.e. they were Protestants, so his father was allowed to marry. So Vincent was one of several siblings. He had a namesake who died 12 months before his birth. So he came from a well-to-do family on both sides, quite a warm and loving family. But he was an odd bod. He was very pensive, laconic, cloud-dwelling sort of child. And his younger brother Theo was rather more thrusting and get ahead. Anyway, so Theo didn't want to become a clergyman like his father, even though he was religiously obsessed to the point of mania. So as a teenager, Vincent, he went to Belgium and he helped run a mission to the labourers there, preaching the gospel to them. Belgium being a preponderantly Catholic country, whereas the Netherlands was a mostly Protestant country. Obviously the unity of the two was well within living memory, so I'm not sure whether he's preaching to them in Dutch or in French, because obviously Belgium's bilingual. He was in the southern part of Belgium, as in the more francophone part. He did master French later on, but the Flemish language and the Dutch languages are virtually identical. Anyway, so he trained to be an art dealer, and having finished his apprenticeship, he got a job in London, and so he was working at a shop on Southampton Street. He was a lodger in Stockwell, which is south of the River Thames. There's a blue plaque there. I've never been there. But he became infatuated with his landlady's daughter, and he proposed to her. But once he had expressed his sentiments for her, she shunned him, which was a very heavy blow. He then got himself a job as a teacher. I'm not sure what, of art perhaps, and he could speak English and French, so was here. Originally it was in Ramsgate, which is on the coast, but then the owner of the school, and it really was one as a business, shifted here, so Vincent came with him. But after about a year that was enough. Given up his very well-paid art dealing job to do this, but he was no longer happy, so he returned to the Netherlands. I think it was in December 1876, if I got that right. So his brother Theo was a highly successful art dealer in Paris. Vincent moved to France, and he quite an absolute master of the French language. He then spent most of his time in Arles, in the south of France, in Provence. It's by a mighty river. I suppose it's the Rhone. I've been there, don't actually remember which one it is. A very prominent city, even though it's not that huge. Got some marvellous Roman ruins, a fabulous aqueduct and so on. And he shared a house with Paul Gogh, a French sailor who was a rather coarse type. He'd spent some time in Tahiti, who liked drawing female nudes, frequenting the brothels and so forth. But and Vincent, of course, sometimes came along with him. Vincent, he was a highly unusual character. His eccentricity was not everybody's cup of tea. He never wed, he had few friends. He corresponded very infrequently with his brother Theo. So Theo kept all Vincent's letters. Vincent discarded his brother's letters. So we have a very full account of Vincent van Gogh's life from the epistles that he sent to his sibling. And he was dependent, well not obviously, he was dependent on financial support from his younger brother. Now he was not remotely interested in painting buildings, it was people, and it was things, it was still life. And he was part of this artistic movement called Impressionism, which was deeply unfashionable at first. Previously, paintings had to be a likeness or something, and as accurate as possible, because, you know, until the 1840s, daguerreotypes, photographs, didn't even exist. So the French Gogh brothers invented them. But Vincent thought things had changed. Because there were photos, that the purpose of painting was no longer to make something in the painting appear as close to it is in reality. No, it was merely to give an impression of it. And then you could be a bit imaginative, and you could express the feeling and the sensation, the texture, and perhaps the temperature, more than just the visual appearance. And he began experimenting with that, and believed in only painting things he could actually see. So he had not the remotest interest in Arles' marvellous architectural heritage. So he suffered intermittent bouts of psychosis, and he had some paranoid delusions and so forth. Notoriously, he once took a razor and cut off the lobe of his ear and gave it to a lady of the night. It's not his whole ear, that's a myth, it's only the lobe. So he was detained in a hospital for the criminally insane for a while, where he painted his self-portrait, where indeed he painted Starry Night. You can hear a song about that Starry Night. Later he was discharged. He then moved to near the Oise, I can't remember the name of the town, but astride the river Oise in northern France, not far from Paris, where he was put under the superintendence of a homeopathic doctor, and he lived with him. And for some reason it's not clear, he took a revolver from the doctor, he walked out into the fields and he shot himself, but in the stomach. Accident, or was it suicide? It's unclear whether it's deliberate or otherwise. But anyway, he was found, he was brought back to the house, he was cared for 2 days, but he later succumbed to his injuries. I'm told that stomach wounds are almost always fatal. I'm not sure why, just so much internal bleeding. So that was him. He died in 1890, and he's buried in the town where he died. So he died in relatively obscurity. His artwork was not popular. It's after his life he achieved fame that he could only have dreamt of. So that was why he is an immortal artist. And his painting, The Sunflowers, remember about 1990, it sold to a Japanese bank for tens of millions of dollars. Bear in mind, in 1990, I mean, $10 million was a far greater sum than it is now in terms of purchasing value, but it was multiples of that. It was 20 million or 30 million, or some mind-blowing sum like that. So that is Vincent van Gogh, who spent a brief sojourn in Londinium, perhaps 2.5 years. That's enough for me. I'm George from Ireland, so please follow me on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and book online lessons with me in history, politics, religious studies, geography, English literature, English language, English as a foreign language, French, law, and so forth. I'll be your tour guide in London, and I edit documents, or I help you with essays, dissertations, a CV, that's your resume, interview practice, elocution, and so forth. I translate from French, Spanish, Italian, Romanian, German, and Russian. Okay, toodaloo.